Hi guys, Joey Vigour here. I'm here with Jeff Siadek
Hello.
of Guerrilla Games, and we are not really sure what this will be, but we'll just sort of roll into it. We're going to talk about our top 3 favorite board games that are not designed by us. So Jeff, why don't you start with your top 3? With your number 3.
My number 3, it's hard to say number 3. I just threw these 3 together. There's a ton of games I love, but there's Terraforming Mars. It's kind of caught my interest lately because it's got that real gritty feel, and it's multiplayer, which I love, and you get to do things. There's a lot of player action. You get a lot of agency, but your choices are somewhat limited, so you don't have analysis paralysis, and it relates to science and traveling in space. I've always loved space travel. If I would have had more science, I might have wanted to be an astronaut. More science and courage and smarts. But other than that, I think I totally would have been an astronaut. Anyway, I love Terraforming Mars. I love what it does.
Don't you have to be at least 5'4" in order to be an
cold.
astronaut?
That's cold. Actually, smaller people do better in the small confines. You're probably too tall. You're like 5'6", 5'7"?
No, I'm 5'10". And when I wear my Hollywood elevator shoes, I'm almost 6 foot even.
Nice. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition. Haven't played 4th Edition yet. Doesn't seem that different from 3rd Edition, so I'm not that concerned about the upgrade as of yet, but we'll see. It is a classic 4X space exploration game, although it's really more 3X because there's not so much the exploration element, but...
You might call it a 5X, too, because it creates X gamers.
Oof. Can we cut that out?
Yeah.
Twilight Imperium is really, really epic, and if you haven't played it, you should try it at least once. It's definitely worth your time. You know, when you play with 6 players and they're all interested in playing the game and finishing the game and winning the game instead of just spinning gears, then you can have a great time. I would say my number 1 problem with Twilight Imperium is that there's a little bit of minutia that you kind of have to learn your first game about what order you expand, because remember, you have to put your command counters down, but once you put them down, you can't move out of that square, so you sort of have to think a little bit or understand the basic mechanic of when you can build versus when you can move, because a lot of people screw themselves over the first turn, and then they have, the next 10 to 12 hours to think about that mistake.
Yeah, that's something that I don't mind in a short game when you can make a mistake and get screwed out of it, because then you can play again quickly. But Civilization, one of my favorite games, didn't make my list, but it's one of my favorite games. But if you don't make a bump early in the game, then you're just watching other people win as you kind of trudge along.
Well, I think some of the best sort of light bulb moments where I realized, oh my gosh, I've been trying to negotiate with Jeff, but what if I negotiate with Greg instead? And, if you say, oh, I'm not going to give you that trade deal or whatever, I'm just, I have nothing to gain from that. I can suddenly realize, wait a minute, I'll just partner with the guy on the other side of you, and we can sort of envelop you like an amoeba and take you out. Anyway, there's a lot of great moments that have happened.
Have you played Diplomacy?
No.
Okay. Diplomacy, it has that, but without all of the bits about whether you put your command counters down first or manufacture first. It's really distilled down to the essence of diplomacy.
Yeah, and I've had Diplomacy in my collection for 15 years, and I didn't want to lose the friends that I had then. Little did I know that it would have been fine to lose those friends, and I probably should have just played Diplomacy 15 years ago, lost them right off the bat, and not had to deal with 15 years of having those people in my life. What's your number 2?
My number 2 favorite game is Agricola. And I said Terraforming Mars is kind of like Agricola in space a little bit. The thing I love about Agricola is that it is the most boring concept you could pitch somebody. Hey, let's pretend we're subsistence farming in medieval Europe. And people say, it just doesn't sound exciting. But the way it's so intuitive with all the bits, you plant your grain in fields and it grows, and you have to get pens to hold in your animals, and you upgrade your house and you get more family members. So it all makes sense, and there's fun in that. And then the scary part is that you're trying to get enough food to feed your family every time there's a harvest. So I've played vampire games and whatever where the Cthulhu games where it's supposed to be scary, but there's nothing as scary as, oh my gosh, here comes the harvest and somebody just fished the last food out of there. What am I going to do? How am I going to feed my family?
Yeah, I don't like it. Okay. My number 2 is Infinity. It's a miniatures game from Spain. There's nothing sort of obvious about what makes it better than other miniatures games. It's just cinematic. It was designed with sort of the cinematics in mind. So, like, for example, I played the one game where a guy had something called a crazy koala, which was sort of like a little drone thing that would run around and blow up. And I realized that I was going to die, or one of my guys was going to die. So I leaped off a building, and I detonated a bomb that I had on the way down and blew up somebody on the ground. And so I died heroically, but it really worked.
That's good. I like cinematic moments.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, the cinematic moment plays out in about 1/100th of real time.
Yeah.
So figuring out what I just described that took 10 seconds to describe took about an hour. But it was a great hour, and it's D20s, so it's sort of like you're rolling little balls around the table instead of rolling dice.
I've heard role-playing referred to as 20 minutes of fun crammed into 4 hours.
Yeah, or 12 hours if you like Twilight Imperium like I do. What you've named one game? No, you've named two.
I've named two. My
top game.
My top
of
game
all time that is not your own.
Of all time that is not my own is Titan.
Titan.
It is a monster board game where you're moving around this map with an interesting master board, and the different territories you go to, you get to muster different characters. So you get ogres, and your ogres will let you get minotaurs, and your minotaurs get dragons, and your dragons get the colossus. And when you move around on the map, you move your stacks around. You can land on other people's stacks and fight them. It is really just a great game. It's great because from a multiplayer standpoint, when you beat on other players, you're not necessarily making the third player stronger, because each of the players, when you win a combat, you get more points to make your Titan bigger. I could go on about it, but I shouldn't.
Well, I've seen you play it before. You invited me to a gaming retreat, and you said get there at noon, and I got there at noon, and you said, we're 30 minutes into a 6-hour game.
That's right. That's just the standard thing people say when you show up.
My number one of all time is Dune, the classic 1979 game from Eon, the company that made the original Cosmic Encounter. And it's basically 6 of the sort of Cosmic Encounter style aliens, which are very, very different from each other, and they play very differently. But the most interactive of those aliens, so that when you team up with a different faction, you really do get a sense that both of your factions are stronger, and it's very thematic to the book Dune. The game has been remade as Rex, and Rex is fine, but I actually don't think Rex is better. With apologies to that team at Fantasy Flight, I don't think Rex is better than the original Dune. I think that Dune has so much flavor and so much theme. It's just been a different experience every single time.
I like Dune. I think it's really kind of wonky, though. So the second time I played, I won because 2 other people killed themselves off, and I ended up winning. And the third time, I don't remember how I won.
You played with me, and we had a nice, relaxing, long, yes. 2.5 hour long game.
And I won that one. Oh, and it was a fine game, but I feel like I didn't know what I was doing, and I won. And games should be harder.
You were playing against people who knew even less.
Yeah.
So
that's good to find.
So that is Jeff Siadek and Joey Vigour's top 3 board games of all time that we did not design.
That's right.
Do you have a favorite game that you did design?
As a matter of fact, Battle Stations is my favorite game. It actually is my favorite game. I love to play it. They say you're never done with a design until you're sick of it, but I am not yet sick of Battle Stations, and it's been about 17 years now.
My favorite game that I did design is called Chaosmos. So, thank you for watching.
That's a great game, too.
Oh, thank you. Would you say it's your favorite game?
I would say it's my favorite game that you designed.
Well, Battle Stations is my favorite game that you designed.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day, and thank you for watching.